Across 6 states, Democrats argue they got momentum and they're unifying around these nominees. Now let's take a look at the top of the show at how it unfolded in real time across the primary election night.
It is election night in America once again.
The Associated Press has just projected that Amy Klobuchar will be the Democratic candidate for governor.
Darlene Graham will advance to a runoff.
This is a very emotional night.
Wisconsin, we have built something that will change politics forever.
And we're not going to give up this race until the votes are counted. That's nonsense.
This campaign was about the many versus the money.
Tom Tiffany stood with those who tried to overturn a free and fair presidential election instead of defending our democracy.
Well, guess what? The many just won.
There you go. You kind of get a little excited, feel like people are really voting, things are happening. I can tell you a lot of Democrats were studying the Wisconsin governor's primary, where voters made David Crowley the Democratic nominee. Now, he's a 40-year-old city official, a member of the ACLU and NAACP, who in most years might seem like a pretty standard Democratic option. But as these years' primaries have featured energized and often victorious Democratic socialists, Crowley's new win after trailing in the polls is being covered by some as a kind of rebuttal to the left, a stunning loss for his more liberal opponent, as the Times put it today. Now, that is ideology. On electability, nonpartisan experts view Crowley as the stronger choice for the Democrats to win, one forecaster shifting that race to the Democrats now that Crowley is the nominee. He had trailed by many points in some polls, and some in the political media are rushing to argue this must be a wider trend. Axios interprets the race as a sign that socialist fever is breaking, that the center-left wing of the party could make a comeback now. Well, many of those reactions are basically narratives hunting for data. You know, I keep it real with you here on The Beat, at least I try to. And the fact is, we won't know much about what all national voters want in the midterms until the midterms are held this November. What we know about Democratic primaries is there is at least now room and certainly a receptive sort of public mindset within Democratic voters for economic populists and for actual Democratic socialists. Voters just showed that in Michigan, which is not exactly left of Vermont or California generally. And if you just broaden out even beyond our certain kind of MAGA-infested era, 20 years ago, New York was run by a centrist billionaire, known above all else for his business career. Today, it's run by a Democratic socialist. Just as New York's district crossing the Bronx and Queens, which is kind of a working-class Democratic enclave, was then 20 years ago led by the establishment Democrat Joe Crowley. Now it's repped by the most prominent Democratic socialist in Congress, AOC. And so positions that were once almost disqualifying among Democrats in most part of the country are certainly now allowed. They're on the table. Sometimes they are rewarded. Now, even as Wisconsin Democrats swung back to this traditional option last night, their nominee will face Tom Tiffany, a MAGA Republican who voted in Congress against certifying Joe Biden's win, the same day that MAGA fans infamously stormed the Capitol in their crime spree. And I mentioned that because that mainlining of the anti-democracy movement from legal steps, in other words, members of Congress can vote to overturn an election and vote not to certify what their own constituents did. That is a legal option, albeit anti-democratic. There are also, of course, the related MAGA criminal plots to pursue that same effort, overthrowing elections by force. Now, that was on display last night and today because the fringe Trump ally Mike Lindell, who runs the company MyPillow, lost in Minnesota but won't concede. He's complaining about vague irregularities, but he's stoking division among Republicans because this was his primary loss. And the GOP again is finding that Trump's playbook may begin by targeting certain liberal opponents, but it is soon deployed against fellow Republicans. It is one of the obvious and yet slowly learned lessons of this MAGA era. Just as Trump's DOJ abuse, which we're documenting here, also includes targeting Republicans on the Fed, all the way out to his own former cabinet officials. As for the politics, Lindell's loss is the third for Trump endorsees in just the last 2 weeks alone. So that's a lot to chew on, but we have some politically hungry guests here at the table. Molly Jong-Fast, a contributing writer with the New York Times, MS Now analyst, host of the Fast Politics podcast, and Sam Cedar, political commentator who hosts the very popular Majority Report on YouTube. It's netted over 1 billion views, and he's interviewed major people like the Congresswoman I just mentioned, AOC, Senator Bernie Sanders, who we had on within the last day. There you see him right there. Sam is actually interesting as someone that a lot of our viewers know from being around what we might call the liberal media, if you will. Yes. But you're also now a digital innovator at a time where some are waking up to the power of that. So I want to get into that with you. Sure. But Molly, let's start with what we did learn last night. Maybe not as much as the headlines say, but a time of Democratic unity, according to at least their spokespeople.
I really like that package you played at the beginning, because I think that this is a narrative that is looking for facts, a framing that doesn't necessarily fit. And if you look at these candidates, what you see is voters really voted for candidate quality. They voted for candidates they thought could win. It wasn't straight down ideological. Certainly, they wanted candidates who were offering them something, who came out as fighters, but they weren't. I just think it's too simple. And in fact, the other thing that, that I think is really important when you look at the top lines of this primary is that in the Wisconsin primary, I happen to have these numbers here very nerdily, 791K approximately Democratic voters versus 490K Republican voters. So there was a big Democratic many more Democratic primary voters in Wisconsin. And in the Minnesota Senate primary, which is another one where you had multiple candidates on the ballot, but still, Democrats 697 versus GOP 406.
Yeah. Sam, I turn to you to transcend the narrative.
Sure.
Rather than succumb to it.
I actually think this narrative is pretty low bar to transcend. Those numbers, I would add that Francesca Hong got the second largest amount of votes in a Democratic primary in the 20th century. The first, of course, being Crowley last night. So, I mean, the turnout was incredible. And I think the idea that this is somehow a resurgence of moderates. Look, this is a very contested state. The past 3 or 4 elections, short of Obama, were decided by 30,000 votes in Biden's favor one time and Trump's a couple of times. And so I think the electorate is very sensitive to the idea of who can win. And I think that narrative took hold where voters became more pundits than they did voting for what they necessarily wanted.
And and in agreement or in addition to that, is it also possible that having 2 strong viewed candidates brought out more people?
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, I think that's what happened. And I think, there could have been some Republican crossover. It's an open primary. But and I don't think, Hong is necessarily a top tier performer on television as some of someone like Abdul El Sayed is, but she's an amazing organizer. And what's built in that state now is an incredible infrastructure,
which she referred to last night.
Which I think
say a little more about that, because not everyone's in the weeds on Wisconsin.
The difference between when you talk about the so-called moderates and folks like DSA or more economic populists, they're winning with less money. I mean, race after race, they're winning or coming very, very close with less money, and that's because the nature of their politics is such that organizing and getting people involved is consistent with their ideology in a way that moderate politicians don't necessarily subscribe to. They get funding from outside sources. They get a lot more PAC money. They'll go up on TV more. But when you get politicians who are more oriented towards an economic populism, you see organizing on the ground. And that organizing doesn't go away.
Right.
That continues. So we're going to see down ballot victories in a state like Wisconsin 2 years from now, 4 years from now. We're going to see more and more, I think, whether it's DSA, whether it's, progressives. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. These organizations don't go away.
And you're making a fair point. Also, they say, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Well, being an independent progressive who's critical of capitalism, whether that's DSA or a little less, is the mother of having to build a grassroots organization, because there's no out-of-state banks coming to help you.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's both necessity, but it's also it is almost an essential to the ideology of their politics. And so it's not just...
Molly has a butt.
I would just add that Ben Wickler, like the state chair of Wisconsin, was very, very good. So it wasn't like they were starting from nothing. There was some infrastructure there that he had done. I mean, I agree, and what Hong has done is amazing. She did these huge town halls, and she had, a huge army of door knockers, which she has said she is now going to bring with her, which is the dream, which is the best any Democratic candidate can do for another. But I just think Ben was.
Oh, without a doubt.
I want to jump in and show what Bernie was talking to you about, because you had a newsworthy interview. Okay. And as I mentioned, you got a lot of folks watching you online. Democrats, some are late to this. They're trying to figure this out. You've been doing this. And Bernie was also talking about the anger, which isn't just at Trump. It is also at the whole broken system. Let's take a look at what you guys talked about.
Well, first off, I want to say, you can see I wore a sport coat for you tonight. I don't.
You dressed up.
I dressed up a little
for the
bit.
beat. We love it.
Yeah. No, I think. Listen, this has been the case for I think a long time, and the anger I think is bubbling over, particularly in Trump too. And there is a frustration with the Democratic establishment that they're not doing enough, both in fighting Trump, but I think more in the sense that you need to do something when you get in office that is going to have a lasting impact and is going to carry through. I mean, one of the things that Bernie and I talked about during that interview was, we cut child poverty in half from the years 21 to 22. We cut it in half, 45%, because of the child tax credit. And then it just it melted away. And there was not enough, I think, outrage, both by the Democrats, frankly, by the media. I mean, that's ostensibly what when you're talking about child poverty, that seems like something that everybody should agree on. And the idea that we were able to have it in just a year is extraordinary. But it was never trumpeted. It was never, the outrage from it reversing was never expressed. And I think the idea is that Democrats, if they get the opportunity to lead again, they need to do lasting material benefits for people going forward. And frankly, that's what these Democratic socialists are proposing. Really nothing more radical than we saw from Democrats during the New Deal through the following 30 years when Democrats controlled Congress.
Well, and isn't it funny, because if you say I'm an FDR Democrat or a New Deal Democrat, right, it hits a little different. Depending on where you are in the country, some of these terms scare people more or less. But when you talk about, having an FDR posture towards regulating the banks before they invest in an AI boom that bankrupts everybody, or actually fighting corruption, or actually getting a square meal and a square deal, and all the rest. I think it's a fair point. We appreciate, by the way, that you put on your jacket.
Thank you.
I've known you. Have I known you a while?
It's been over 20 years.
You are more liberal than you look.
Well,
you could be a St. Louis accountant, consultant, a dad, soccer coach. You're more liberal than you look.
Maybe in a parallel universe, I am.
Yeah? Yeah. You're a country club Republican in a different timeline?
Well, I mean, I dress a little bit conservatively growing up, I guess, in Worcester, Mass. But no, I mean, I think I would consider myself, of the left and, looking towards policies that are going to have meaningful impact
that help people's lives. I get it. And you can do that. I'm out of time, but you can do that in a Brooks Brother take as much as anyone else. We salute it.
J. Crew.
J. Crew.
There we go.
I'm out of time, Molly. We're going to continue this colloquy. My thanks to both of our special guests. Of all of Trump's broken promises, one that has angered people the most this summer is the failure to stem high prices. You can see right here how many essentials people are struggling to pay for. even as the rate of inflation is technically slowing. This war has spiked gas prices higher than ever at this point in the year. And another indicator of the pain is the hard data on how people just can't afford things anymore, literally, meaning separate from polling, we see when you measure credit card debt, it's near record highs at over $1 trillion. And Trump, meanwhile, is spending $1 billion on his construction projects, taxpayers covering that despite his prior claims. It's a controversial set of economic priorities that doesn't sit well with the public.
The economy is robbing me blind every step of the way.
The cost of living is absolutely insane.
Feeding your kids should not feel this expensive.
Gas went up a whole $1.
Gas prices finna to go up, so y'all need to work on your astral projections so you could just tell your boss, yo, I'm here at work, but in spirit.
America is struggling because of 2 words: Donald Trump.
That's what some people think. If you broaden out beyond what people are posting online, the data shows most disapprove of Trump's job performance. The new jobs report, meanwhile, shows the economy losing over 20,000 jobs. Over half of Americans feel that they're in an economy that is just getting worse. That percentage shows you that would include people who have voted for Trump before. So here we are, back to the fundamentals. It's the economy, stupid. That's the James Carville maxim that politicians forget at their peril. It haunted Biden and Harris in the inflation election of 2024, and it is haunting Republicans now. And if this sounds a little repetitive, well, as the rapper Lecrae put it, the reason why I sound the same is because the truth don't change. We're going to get into important truths with Alex Wagner, who knows all about it. You know that bar, right, Alex?
Of course.
Of course. Next. We're back with MS Now business analyst Ron Insana, publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack, and Alex Wagner, of course, political analyst with us, host of Runaway Country on Crooked Media. Everybody's busy. Alex, I said it's the economy, stupid, and the reason why we sound the same is the truth don't change, because we're back to not only an economy election possibly, but a price election.
Yeah, and specifically, we have like a 2-tier economy, one for the rich and one for low-income service workers, increasingly. There are, I think, 2 million American workers that have left the labor force since last November because people are essentially giving up on it. Wage growth is not keeping pace with inflation. There's a housing market crisis. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing upwards. And you have an administration that's not only does not have its eyes on the ball, but is doing everything it can to exacerbate an already bleak scenario for the average American voter. I mean, Donald Trump is imposing 50% tariffs on Canada that go into effect next week, which is going to disproportionately affect Canada's #1 trading partner, the state of Michigan, which, as you recall, is a crucial swing state. I mean, you'd think that this administration would at least be on the lookout for the voters they need to keep on their side of the ledger come November, but no. I mean, Donald Trump was telling the truth when he said he doesn't think about Americans' financial situations at all.
Ron?
Yeah, no, listen, exactly what Alex said. And, on top of that, you have the war in Iran that is keeping oil prices, gasoline prices higher than they would otherwise be, still hovering around $4 a gallon. We're still in the middle of the summer driving season. And you have grocery prices that have yet to come down. And so really across the board, and I've been describing it this way for quite some time, we have a mini stagflationary environment. You've got inflation, generally speaking, even though today's numbers are relatively benign with respect to the rate of inflation slowing a little bit, prices are still well above where they were a year ago, about 3.5% on average. And then you've also got, as you mentioned earlier, the job market starting to weaken. We saw a negative print last month. It's possible we could see that again and we could see further downward revisions in prior months.
Well, and I want to, Alex, Ron says we saw a negative print last month, and I thought, what's that mean?
I'm sorry. We lost jobs in the month of July, 23,000 of them. And so we could see that happen again. And if indeed the labor market deteriorates further while inflation continues to stay above the Fed's 2% target, you've got this kind of stagflationary environment. It's not the 70s where unemployment's 11%, inflation's 13%, rates are 20%, but it's still uncomfortable for everybody, particularly, as Alex pointed out, those at the lower end of the income distribution who are struggling to pay their bills and making choices.
And people feel it. And Alex, I only partly joke because Ron is like the Kornacki of the Labor Department statistics, we're happy to have somebody around.
Without hair.
Yeah, someone who knows what they're talking about, not just
who
you and
knows
me.
about negative, it was negative print?
That's what I call it.
Yeah, knows about negative print. It's like, sure. And yet, you don't need to know the terms to be a voter who's facing this. And I'm curious, Alex, as a student of politics, we all kind of look at some of the same signals about whether this sort of prototypical distraction, promotion, and sometimes outright divisive hate playbook of the GOP can really distract people away from what we just saw as happening this summer, what they're living through.
Yeah, there's a very specific reason Republican candidates and Republican electeds don't want to talk about the Trump economy. It's bad. So they've defaulted to race baiting, xenophobia, and Islamophobia in some specific cases. But, you know, I mean, people vote on their lived experience, for better or for worse, I would say. I mean, I think it would be good for us as a society if we cared more about people who weren't like us. But nonetheless, the reality of American politics is, as James Carville said, it is the economy stupid because that's people's lived experience. And, you know, as much as we talk about corruption and Trump and the White House ballroom costing $900 million or $900 million footed by the American taxpayer, the reason that level of self-serving, malignant narcissism and corruption resonates is precisely because everyday Americans can't afford hamburger meat. And the Mad King in the White House is obsessed with gilding horse statues outside of the Lincoln Memorial in an extra coat of 14-karat gold. I mean, it's just completely detached from reality. And in that is an inherent cruelty that I think the essential question of fairness really resonates emotionally in a way that it hasn't even in previous election cycles.
And you said we should care about people who are not like us. Were you going for a subtle Kendrick reference there or not? I wasn't sure.
They are not like us. But I also, you know, I think I would argue to you, Ari, that the numbers, I mean, Trump's approval rating, which is in the basement, should be even lower given what he's doing on immigration, which is so appalling and so un-American. But really the thing that is sinking him are the economic numbers. Now, that's understandable, but at the same time, all of it collectively should be having an even, I think, more dire impact on his approval ratings.
Well, so let me take that to Ron, because there's places where Trump isn't doing anything. He's not using the power of the presidency to directly go after high prices and inflation or gas prices. That's sort of clear. Right. He is doing a lot on immigration in a way that he promised would have an immediate effect of helping the American labor market. And so even apart from what Alex called the cruelty, what we've seen might be illegal stops, that's not working either the way they said it would.
No, in fact, with his tariffs, he promised the creation of manufacturing jobs. We've lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs since Liberation Day last year. With respect to the outflow of immigrants, some 3 million have left the country either involuntarily or voluntarily. So it's the first time since 1935 we've had a net outflow of population in the United States, which is shrinking the size of the labor force, reducing what we call the labor force participation rate, the number of people who are in the workforce and actually working. And so you cannot have economic growth if your labor force is shrinking. It just doesn't happen that way. There are two big props for the economy right now that are keeping us effectively out of recession. Number one is the enormous amount of spending on artificial intelligence infrastructure, and the other is at the upper end of the income distribution, the upper end of the band, people are spending very freely because the stock market's near all-time highs.
So I want to then give you a challenge and then have Alex respond as the final word in the segment, which is when we hear about the K-shaped economy, can you explain it in English and why so many see it as a problem? And then Alex could perhaps give us the politics of that, because they don't seem to be good for this Treasury Department.
So the K-shaped economy, which Treasury Besant said he was getting sick of hearing about, is one in which where if you're on the upside and you're doing well, upper income or extremely wealthy, you're spending freely, the gains in the economy are accruing to you. Those on the lower end of the income distribution are struggling either to maintain their spending or they're falling behind because wages are not keeping up with inflation. And so, and in addition to that, I would argue, and I haven't determined whether I'm writing a book about this yet, there's an E-shaped economy. You have the aristocracy, you have the upper middle, or that's the upper income, and then at the very bottom you have what we're building out right now, which is a permanent.
So let me bring it to Alex, because Ron not only snuck in another letter, but a plug for a book he hasn't written yet.
Well, that's true.
Impressive. That's why he's Ron and Sana.
In Seattle, we call that chutzpah, okay? But we love it, we welcome it, we honor it. Alex, you EK, letter of the day, Sesame Street, word of the day. What do you think, Alex, about the Treasury Secretary trying to insist? I mean, this is where you see that liberal critiques worked. He's heard about it enough that he's trying to rebut it and insist this isn't a K-shaped economy just for the people at the very top, Alex.
I mean, it's delusional. When diesel is over $5 a gallon up and down the East Coast, people know and understand that. This is them going to the grocery store. This is them taking their kid to the doctor's office. This is them filling up the gas tank. It doesn't matter what Scott Bessent says. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. I mean, they can try and paper over this as much as they want, but the reality is the reality. And that's where I think Republicans are running into the cold, hard wall of financial reality for the vast majority of this country. The fact that Ron's talking about a permanent aristocracy and a permanent underclass tells you that we are kind of in the late stage, end of times empire economy, which is not where America wants to be or should be, and the American people know it.
Yeah.
Lost his innards. Shut down! Tides always turn.
I dreamed that I was taking Bob's and walked down a hill
Shut down!
for a city and, well, I switched it.
Just for you. Ally double kill. Ally scored a triple. Ace. I'd like to see that again. Destroy the turret. Turret destroyed. Your ally has been slain. The albatross is circling.
I gotta work on my landing.
Killing spree. Your mate's feet in the freezer. Everything but an egg. You have slain an enemy. late.
Feels so good.
Your ally has slain an enemy.
Oh, Cameron
An
sounds so...
enemy has been slain. There's a proper thing. Your ally has been slain. Shut down! You have slain an enemy. Your ally has slain an enemy. Your ally has been slain.
Mom, stop.
Couldn't have picked better myself. Inhibitor destroyed! Your ally has been slain! Solve that one. Your ally has slain an enemy! Your ally has been slain. Your ally has slain an enemy. My grandfolks used to live up north. Your ally has been slain. Double kill! Gave them both barrels. Aced! Allies decorating the seabed. Your ally has been slain. Shut down! Tides always turn. You have slain an enemy. The enemy's on a rampage! Your turret's been destroyed! Your ally has slain an enemy!